So I have to be crazy to make this video, right? Like,
why would an AuthorTuber tell me not to listen to other AuthorTubers? Like, this doesn't make any sense.
but I promise, bear with me, we'll get through it. Hello friends, welcome back to another video. If you're new here, I'm Megan, and here we talk about all things books, writing, grammar, and more. Please make sure to give this video a like, it helps out my channel a ton. Don't forget to subscribe and ring that bell so you're notified every time I upload a new video. Probably noticed that I am not in my regular studio. If you watched my last video, you know I'm actually out here in Washington State instead of Georgia, where I live. We came out here very last minute, so I wasn't able to film anything before we left. So, you know, we're working with what we have. I've got like this lamp on me. Like, I'm really sorry about the lighting, you guys, but I think this should be my last video here. My next one should be in my regular studio with the good lighting and whatnot, but for today, you know, it works. So this topic is something that I've been thinking about for a very, very long time. Even though I am an AuthorTuber, I still watch other AuthorTubers. I watch YouTube videos like crazy. I love YouTube, but I've also been on other platforms just trying to make connections with readers outside of YouTube and just kind of see what's going on in the community. And I've noticed this pattern that when it was brought to my eyes, I was like, oh my gosh, you guys are kind of right. And this is the belief that by many, many readers out there, that AuthorTubers should not be giving writing advice. Now that's something that's kind of crazy for me to be saying, you know, I'm an AuthorTuber and I give writing advice. So we're gonna take a deeper look into this and see what's right about it, what's wrong about it, and this is going to be part one of two videos. The first part of this video is going to be from the watcher's perspective, and part two is going to be from the AuthorTuber's perspective. I'm gonna kind of go through a list of complaints that I've seen from readers and even other YouTube watchers about AuthorTubers and kind of break it down into what I agree with, what I disagree with. So the first one is one of the biggest complaints that I see is that AuthorTubers are giving advice where their way is the only way that could possibly ever be right. And I agree with a lot of people that this is not a great mindset to go into when making advice videos. Just because something worked for one person doesn't mean it's going to work for every other person. That was your path. That's one path that you can take. And you can't really replicate that because everyone is different. Every circumstance is different. So even if you took the exact same path, it doesn't mean it's going to work for you. So by trying to say this is the only way that you can get followers or this is the only way that you can write, it's not very fair. There are exceptions to every single rule. So if I haven't made that clear to you, I am sorry, but any writing advice I give you, please take it with a small grain of salt. If it does not pertain to you or your genre or is just, it will not work for you, then don't take the advice. Another complaint that I see from a lot of readers is that AuthorTubers a lot of times just don't have the credentials to qualify themselves to be giving writing advice in the first place. Give them a chance and see if you can uncover how they're qualified to be telling you this advice. I would not take this advice from anyone for any reason, AuthorTube or not, blindly. Now, if someone's trying to tell me how I can quickly make $1 million and they don't have $1 million, then why would I be taking their advice? That doesn't make any sense. So same thing here on AuthorTube. Make sure that the advice that they're giving is something that they're qualified to be giving you advice on. For example, if you look back on my older videos, you will see that I only give advice on certain topics. You're not going to find how to make a book blurb, how to design your own cover, how to release to be a best-selling author, because these are things I'm not at all qualified to talk about yet. So while you will definitely not see a video like that from me anytime soon, it's a possibility in the future I could make some of these videos. But what I am an expert in is grammar, so you'll see grammar videos, the beginning stages of the writing process, my own writing journey. If you haven't watched the videos where I talk about my qualifications, I used to be a substitute teacher. I did a lot of subbing in high school English. I am a professional proofreader. I've been doing that for almost 3 years now. I did take actual courses. Not that there's an actual proofreading certification that you can take, but there are things that you can do to make yourself a professional proofreader versus someone who is kind of good at proofing, but it doesn't give me the qualifications to talk about every single thing in the writing process or how to be successful in the writing process when I have yet to publish my first book. So if you see me coming out with a video that's something like, you know, how to be a bestseller in like the next month or two, then you'll be like,
Megan, you went absolutely crazy because you haven't done that yet.
So you're not going to see something like that from me. Same thing with other AuthorTubers. If they're producing content that they have absolutely no experience with and don't know how to do these things themselves when they're trying to, don't take that advice. But if you can find an AuthorTuber who is qualified to give you information, such as, you know, when I was going through the critique partner process, I made videos on going through the critique partner process. You know, I was qualified at that point to say, this is my experience and this is what you might experience. So just double check that everyone you're taking information from is actually qualified to be giving you any sort of information around that. Next is many AuthorTubers are still mastering their craft. Going back to my book blurb example, I have written a book blurb, but I am not going to make a video on how to make a book blurb because I'm not comfortable with that yet. It's something I'm still working through. I'm trying to master this process. So I'm not going to go out and give you guys information on how to write a book blurb when I myself don't feel 100% confident in making book blurbs. Like, that just doesn't make any sense. So if you're watching someone who is still trying to master dialogue or world building or anything else, and they're trying to give advice when they themselves can't do it, there's kind of this line. I can see some people saying, I absolutely should not be listening to any advice you give because you're telling me how to write dialogue, but you don't know how to properly write dialogue. Great, if you want to do that, that's fine. The other part of this is, you ever heard that phrase, which I hate this phrase, but those who can't do teach? That kind of can be true sometimes when you're a writer. For example, let's go back to grammar. Sometimes you know the Chicago manual style. You know it in and out. You can look at someone's papers and you're like, okay, I know what's wrong with this. But you know, maybe in their own work, they are kind of blind to the mistakes that they're making. So just because they're making a lot of grammatical mistakes doesn't mean that they can't identify them in someone else's work or teach you the process. Maybe they're really good at explaining step by step by step of how to use an apostrophe or use a comma. So if they can't do it in their own writing, but you look it up and you make sure that what they're saying is actually true and they're breaking it down into a way that you find very helpful, then go ahead, continue watching it. So it's just kind of what you want to do there. So it's kind of up to you to decide if you're going to listen to someone who can't do something but they still have educated themselves in that, or if you just think that they should not be giving advice. Another complaint that I see from a lot of people about AuthorTubers is that the advice they give is basic or beginner. And I would agree with a lot of that. Some AuthorTubers do give very basic advice where you can just kind of Google it and you're like, why did I watch this 20-minute video when I could Google it and get the answer in 5 seconds? I understand that argument 100%. But I would also like to say to you, there are beginners out there who want to feel involved in the community. So even if you're giving some very basic advice, some people enjoy that and it may not be for you. So go find an AuthorTuber who does give, you know, more advanced advice. They are definitely out there. I would search for them. I found some channels very early on that were giving beginner advice and it made me feel a part of the community. So if it's not for you, then it's not for you, and that's totally fine. But it probably is for someone out there. So I'd kind of like to just wrap all this up and say, you know, advice is not universal. Advice cannot be for everyone. Just because you found someone on AuthorTube who you don't like doesn't mean that they're not bringing value to someone else. So I would say just do your homework, make sure that they have the background, that they're qualified to be talking about anything that they're talking about. Double check, you know, if they're trying to give you grammar advice and you open the Chicago Manual of Style and it's saying the opposite, then why are you taking their grammar advice? So just do your research. And what it really comes down to, I feel, on the platform is just community. I want to be here for the community and the people that are here. So sometimes I don't really get upset if someone is giving me basic advice. I know not to take certain advice that doesn't apply to me, and so I would encourage you to do the same thing. If advice does not pertain to you, then don't take the advice. As I always say, there are exceptions to every rule, so maybe there are some AuthorTubers out there who you shouldn't be watching. I don't know. I'm not gonna try and go find them or say any name. Just because I don't find them valuable doesn't mean someone else is not going to find them valuable. So just to clarify before we jump in, I am not saying in this video that all things AuthorTube are bad, or that you should completely avoid the platform, or that even you will have the same experiences that I have. Everyone has different experiences, but these are my experiences or experiences from people who I know are on the platform. These are things I haven't seen many AuthorTubers talk about at all, and I think there's a lot to consider before you just put yourself up on the internet to be an AuthorTuber. One of the biggest complaints I think people get on AuthorTube is being lumped into being an AuthorTube author, or your book is an AuthorTube book, which should be a good thing, but it is definitely seen as something very bad.
They're bad. You shouldn't read them.
And I don't think that that's entirely fair. I know a lot of people consider my book to be an AuthorTube book, but I came up with the concept years before I even knew what AuthorTube was, let alone before I started my own AuthorTube channel. I was done with my first draft about 2 years before I started my channel, and had gone through a lot of the processes like the self-editing, the critique partner process, all before I even started on YouTube. So people are going to lump in my book as an AuthorTube book, but again, there's a lot to consider. So all I can really say about this is if you are an author on YouTube who creates content, just know that some people will not read your book strictly for the fact that you produce content on AuthorTube. There's nothing you can really do about that. You're not going to convince anyone that your book is different from other people's books. So I guess that's something you kind of just have to accept. I will say though that this point does have some validity to it. Oftentimes people who have a very large following on AuthorTube can get comfortable in their writing because they know they have a large fan base. They know people are going to buy their books. So they can maybe get a little comfortable or try to rush things to please their audience, but that is something you definitely should avoid. Take the time that your book needs to get to where it needs to be. Once you lose the trust of your audience, it's really hard to earn it back. So don't just try to rush content or rely on the fact that you have followers so they're just going to buy your book. This is terrible. It gives AuthorTube a very bad name. And I know there are two main AuthorTubers who take the brunt of this for sure, who have very large channels and people do not enjoy their books and they say they don't follow their own advice. I can absolutely see this point of view, but just because two AuthorTubers may not take their own advice doesn't mean the other thousands of us are not doing that. Another downfall I've seen from other AuthorTubers is that they feel that their opinion somehow matters more than everyone else's opinion, which again makes the community look bad. And if you're part of the community, it kind of falls on you even if you are not like that. What I mean by this is even if you're an expert on a topic, it doesn't mean that your views or what you say is the only way to do anything. And I feel like a lot of AuthorTubers are saying,
this is the only way to do it. If you don't do it this way, then you're stupid and you're never gonna make it as an author.
And that's really not fair. And if someone disagrees with you, there is absolutely no excuse for you to be bashing them on your channel. You have a public channel, and depending on how many viewers you have influence over a lot of people here. And so if you don't like someone else's opinion or someone just disagrees with you so you decide you hate them, if you're going to publicly bash them, I'm sorry, that just makes you look bad. To sort of go along with that point, I do have writing advice videos that you can definitely look at, but I want to say, as I've said in so many videos before, there are exceptions to every single rule out there. So if my advice does not fit your genre, your style, your category, or whatever else, please don't listen to it. Only listen to the advice that actually applies to you. There's no one size fits all, including my channel. Some of the biggest downsides to being an author on a public platform would absolutely be the haters and the creeps. People are going to try to argue with you. It's going to happen. If it hasn't happened yet and you continue in the process and you grow and grow, it's going to happen. There's really no way of getting around it. I would say it started happening for me around 100 subscribers, maybe even a little less. But people who've never even watched your videos, don't know who you are, have never read your book, somehow are going to have an opinion on you. I don't know where this opinion comes from, but you know, they look at your face and they decide that your videos suck, that you suck, that your book sucks, that no one should ever listen to you. And if you have watched any of my videos, then you know the presence that I try to have here on AuthorTube. Yet, let me tell you a few of the names that I have been called by people either in YouTube comments or Facebook comments. And I'm not sure if I'm gonna get in trouble from YouTube for saying these words, so I really hope not. I've been called a bigot, racist, homophobic, uneducated. I've gotten the whole educate yourself thing. Yeah, that was fun. I've also had people talk down to me where, okay, if you're a woman, then you know this one, but where people tried to put you down by calling you girl. And I would say 90% of the time that people have called me these things, they haven't watched my videos. They have not read my book. I've actually had people tell me that my book is a ripoff of someone else's book, but they haven't read my book. This is a very hard topic to talk about because we should not have to put up with these things. I shouldn't have to have someone be calling me a racist just because my MC is black. That is absolutely ridiculous. But unfortunately, that's part of being on the internet and putting yourself out there publicly. And you know, my one video on this topic is not going to stop people from doing this. People feel anonymous when they're online. They've got the screen between you and them, and they will say just about anything because they're a troll, they're a hater. So if you're an AuthorTuber and you're getting this hate, or you're sitting there like, oh my gosh, I really don't want to have to go through that, don't let it get to you. If you see someone doing hate, don't even read the full thing. Do not comment on it, just delete it. There's no need for these comments to be on there at all. I will delete 1,000 comments from a video if people are going to be hateful. There's no room for hate on my channel, so if you think you're gonna come on here and call me names, I'm just gonna delete your comment. The other part of this is what I would call creeps, where they're not trying to hate on you or your channel, they're just being extremely inappropriate with you. I've had people try to private message me, I've had people in my comments where they try to make advances at you. Again, ignore it and just delete it. If it's making you uncomfortable, just delete the comments. Another thing AuthorTubers have to look out for is spammers. I've gotten countless comments on so many videos of mine where it's, I believe, just a link to a site with a lot of naked people on it. You know what I'm talking about. Just delete them. You don't need to comment. You don't need to say, hey, get out of here. Just delete the comment. Also, going along with the haters, people will try to put words in your mouth. They will put words in your mouth. They will take what you've said and twist it into something horrible. And again, most of the time, these people have not even watched the video. They look at the thumbnail and then they have decided what your argument is and they argue against you. Now, if it's hateful, again, just delete it. But sometimes people actually have a valid point. A lot of times what they're telling me is exactly what I'm saying in the video. And I'll just comment to them, hey, these are great points. This is exactly what I'm talking about in the video. Go ahead and check it out. You know, you don't need to fight people. If you think that there's someone who wants to have an actual conversation with you, just let them know to watch the video. I've done with this with people and they're like, oh, okay, cool, I'll watch your video. Then they watch the video and then they comment on the video. I see what you were talking about. I totally agree with you. People are going to have snap judgments. They're going to put words in your mouth. Not fun when people take what you say out of context and then try to make you the bad guy. But it happens. Again, you're on YouTube. You're here with a 10, 12, 15-minute video, however, I don't know how long your videos are, but you can only talk about a topic so in depth. If I wanted to say every single perspective on one topic, it would be hours long of a video on just one specific thing to cover all my bases. And that's just not how YouTube works. So a lot of times what people like to do is reach into those gaps of what you may have said or have not said and use it against you. Again, just ignore it. Just delete the hateful comments. And definitely watch out for this one as well, because it's not always just trolls or haters who are doing this. I've had actual other large AuthorTubers take what I've said in 1 or 2 sentences where I'm trying to be helpful to someone, twist my words, put a different meaning into my mouth, and then drag my name through the mud. That's unacceptable. We should not be doing this to each other. If you have a problem with another AuthorTuber, reach out to them and ask for clarification. There's no need to have an argument with someone where you're dragging their name through the mud, and if you're the larger channel, you need to take some responsibility here and realize the influence that you're having when you're taking someone who has a smaller channel and what you're doing to their reputation. It's honestly disgusting and it needs to stop. All right, now for some less heavy stuff here on AuthorTube. Running a successful AuthorTube channel is very time consuming and is a big commitment. Take just a 5-minute video, for example. You could look at this 5-minute video that a YouTuber has put up and think it may have taken maybe an hour to make the 5-minute video. You know, you've got to write a script and you've got to film and then you edit it down a little and then you just post it. That is not how it works. It takes much more time. A 5-minute video can easily take 5+ hours to create, depending on the content and how much editing actually needs to go into that video. For example, some of my 10 or 15-minute videos actually took less time than one of my 3.5, 4-minute videos, which is my book trailer. That took me months and months to complete. So just because you're seeing a small little portion, don't think it's going to take you this much amount of time. And again, there are exceptions to every rule. So if it takes you only an hour to make a video, that's great. But I'm saying for most people, it's going to take much longer. Having a channel is also a very, very big commitment. If you want to build up a large audience, more than, 10, 100, 200, 1,000 people, then they're going to expect consistency from you. And yes, every once in a while, things come up. You probably, if you've followed me for a long time, have noticed that I have had to skip 1 or 2 weeks. But what I like to do is I have bonus videos to supplement that, because you know that I post videos every single Tuesday. That's why in the 1 year that I've been on AuthorTube, I think this is the 62nd video I have. So I'm definitely making, on average, just over 1 video a week for you guys, which is very consistent. Now, consistency does not mean you have to upload twice a week or once a week. You could do once every 2 weeks, once a month, whatever fits what you're talking about and your audience. You just need to pick what would be consistent for you. Finally, one of the most annoying things about being on AuthorTube is people are going to try to tell you how to do everything. No AuthorTuber who has 300,000 subscribers is going to look at my channel and be like,
"Hey Megan, I see your channel. Let me help you along the way."
That would be fantastic. No, what I'm talking about is people who have no idea what they're talking about at all. They have never been on AuthorTube. They don't really use social media. They don't run a business. They're not a writer. Never made or edited a video. They've never written a script, but they're going to tell you how you can do it better. And again, it's one of those things that just comes along with being on the platform, unfortunately. Absolutely one of the most annoying parts, but it's something you just got to deal with.